Um, I think I'm just going to talk about the graphs of three of the trig functions. And, the other three we don't really work with so much. So let's just do three of them in the interest of time. Okay. Uh, so sine and cosine are periodic. All the trig functions are periodic. Periodic means that they repeat themselves. So for sine, what we're going to do is we're going to graph one period and understand that it's just going to keep repeating. And the domain of sine is all real numbers, but the period of sine goes from 0 to 2 pi. We are going to label a 1 because that's going to be the top of the range, and a -1 here because that's the bottom of the range. The key thing you got to remember is that sine starts at 0. The first y value of sine is 0. So when I go to look at sine, it goes from 0. Typically, when I sketch a graph, I'm going to label these five important points here. 0, I cut it in half in 2 pi. I cut it in half, I get pi. I cut that in half, I get pi over 2. I cut from pi to 2 pi in half to get 3 pi over 2. So we start at 0. At pi over 2, we go up to 1. We go back down to 0. We go down to -1, and we go back to 0. So one period of sine looks like this. And then it just keeps repeating. So to show it keeps repeating, I put a little arrow on this side, put a little arrow on this side. It's understood that it's repeating. Okay. Cosine looks very similar. So I'm going to do the same thing. I chop it up into these 5 important points. Again, I get that just by cutting the different things in half. So you're really cutting this whole interval into 4 equal pieces. I'm going to label the 1 and the -1 for our range as well. But in this case, what we're going to do is we don't start at 0. Cosine of 0 is actually 1. So we're going to start up here. So you go 1 to 0 to -1 to 0 to 1 like that. That goes. Put a little arrow to indicate it repeats, and that's cosine. Any questions about those two? All right. So if you wanted to do tangent, as we know, tangent just divides sine over cosine. So we know that tangent is one. It's a sorry. Tangent is sine x over cosine x. So I want you to notice that cosine is 0 at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Well, you're not allowed to have a 0 in the denominator. So anytime we hit pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2, we can actually have a vertical asymptote. So this guy looks like this. So we're going to have a vertical asymptote here. We have another vertical asymptote over here. And then the graph for tangent kind of just shoots off. Oops. It hugs the asymptote, and it looks like this. It keeps repeating like this. So it goes. Okay. So these are the main graphs. Usually, we actually graph a period going from -pi over 2 to pi over 2. So, normally I'd have something coming out here like this. This would be -pi over 2. I would have I'd have my asymptote at negative pi over 2. Oops, what just happened there? Something like this. And the actual graph looks like this. So it kind of has these like, I don't know how to describe that shape. I think of it as John Travolta, but that doesn't mean anything to you, I think. So this is, the basics of trig. I think we know enough for the rest of this particular course, but 5B requires all of this and a little bit more.